Hello everyone. Welcome to the Real Spill channel. We're starting a new story. I was on my way to my younger sister's wedding when my housekeeper called. Pretend you're sick. Get off that plane. I almost laughed. It had to be a mistake, but her voice was shaking with fear. Please, Miss Carter, I'm begging you. What happened next? If these stories mean something to you, please subscribe. Your support means more to me than you can imagine. It's my motivation. It's the reason I keep telling these stories. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's begin. The call came in at 2:47 p.m. on October 14th, just as Emily Carter was walking through Lakeview International Airport. Her flight to Boston was boarding in 40 minutes. Her younger sister, Lily Carter, was waiting at Logan Airport with champagne and a bridesmaid sign. Lily's wedding was the next day. Her phone buzzed, a landline number. Who even calls from a landline in 2026? Emily answered. Hello, Miss Carter. A whisper, urgent, trembling. Thank God you picked up. You cannot get on that plane. Emily's chest tightened. It was Veronica, their housekeeper. She had never called. Not once. Veronica Hayes, 48. She'd been working for Daniel and Emily for years. 3 times a week. She came from a small rural town outside Cedar Grove. Rough hands, tired eyes. In all that time, she and Emily had exchanged maybe a couple hundred words, polite greetings, laundry instructions, nothing more. But that Tuesday, Veronica came in early. Her youngest daughter was sick, and she needed to make up the hours. She walked in at 11 a.m., expecting an empty apartment. Daniel was supposed to be at the office. He wasn't. She heard voices coming from his study the moment she stepped into the hallway. The door was slightly open. Daniel's voice and others. She should have announced herself. Knocked. Made some noise. Done the polite thing. But something stopped her. Something made her stay quiet. Maybe it was the tone of his voice, low, careful, conspiratorial. Veronica moved closer, still clutching her cleaning supplies, pressing herself against the wall. You sure about the turbulence? Daniel asked. Absolutely. A lower voice, rougher, older. October flights to Boston are always bumpy. The crew knows how to use that. 1 second she's standing, next she falls. Hits her head on the bathroom counter. Fatal accident. Clean as black ice. And the crew member, Ethan Cole, flight attendant on the 3:30 flight. Gambling debt, just like yours. 50 grand, he's mine. He'll make sure she's standing at the right moment. He'll make sure the fall looks real. A third voice, younger, nervous. Daniel, are we really doing this? She's your wife. 12 years together. 12 years of nothing, Mark. Daniel's voice hardened. No kids, no passion. She's an architect. I'm in business. We grew apart. And she has no idea about the insurance. $750,000. Double payout for accidental death. That's $1.5 million. Enough to fix everything. Your debts, mine, everything. And the housekeeper. Another voice asked. Veronica, she comes Tuesdays and Thursdays. But she won't be here when it happens. I'll make sure she has the day off. She's nobody. She won't know anything. The words hit Veronica like a physical blow. She was nobody. She knew nothing, but now she knew everything. She moved silently back to the kitchen. Hands shaking, she pulled out her phone and opened the voice recorder. Then she crept back toward the study, holding her breath, pressing the phone as close to the door as possible. The recording caught fragments. Maybe not enough for court, but enough. The insurance will go through anyway. Minimal investigation. Grieving husband. No one will look too closely. Chloe knows. She's pushing you into this, Daniel. She wants you free. Chloe will get what she deserves. Chloe. Veronica knew. Chloe Bennett, an elegant real estate agent who came to their dinner parties, laughed too loudly at Daniel's jokes, touched his arm when she thought no one was watching. The meeting ended 20 minutes later. Chairs scraped, footsteps moved toward the door. Veronica rushed back to the kitchen, loudly opening cabinets, pretending she had just arrived. The men passed by. Daniel, a tall man with a scar along his neck. Victor Langley, as she later learned, and a thin, anxious man, Mark Dawson, Daniel's cousin. None of them looked at her. She was nobody. As soon as the door closed behind them, Veronica called Emily. Now, at the airport, Emily pressed the phone tighter to her ear. The noise of the terminal faded. Families rushing past. Announcements in English. The distant roar of planes, all drowned out by Veronica's frightened whisper. Miss Carter, I recorded part of the conversation. I didn't know what else to do. I was so scared. But I thought, if something happens, someone has to know. Emily's knees nearly gave out. She leaned against the wall. Her purse slipped from her hand. Veronica, this can't be real. Daniel and I. We've been married 12 years. He loves me. He said the Boston flight was perfect, less turbulence this time of year. That's exactly why, Veronica said. You'll go to the restroom. A crew member, Ethan Cole, will make sure you fall. Hit your head. Fatal accident. The insurance pays double. The words wouldn't fit together. They just wouldn't. Emily thought of Daniel that morning, the cool brush of his cheek against her lips, his distracted call me when you land. She thought of 12 years of breakfasts, arguments, quiet evenings, looking out over the river from their bedroom window. She thought of the man who held her when her mother died, who stood beside her at her father's grave, who promised they'd grow old together. He's planning to kill me, Emily whispered. Not a question, a realization. Yes, Veronica's voice trembled. And he's not alone. There's a man, Victor Langley. He organizes things like this. And Daniel's cousin Mark. And a woman, Chloe Bennett. He mentioned her. He said she wants him free. Chloe, the elegant blonde who always sat a little too close to Daniel at company parties. The one who brought him expensive whiskey for his birthday. The one Emily convinced herself was just being friendly. Miss Carter, you cannot get on that plane. And you cannot go home. You can't let him know you know. Emily looked at the departures board. Flight 480 to Boston. Boarding. Gate 14. Her gate. I need to call Lily, she said. No. Veronica's voice turned firm. Not now. Not from the airport. They could be watching. Daniel said he paid someone on the crew. Ethan. He might be looking for you right now. Go to the restroom. Stay there 10 minutes. Then go to the medical station near baggage claim. Say you feel faint. They'll call an ambulance. That creates a record. Then you disappear. Emily's architectural mind, the part that saw systems and structures, kicked in. Veronica was right. A paper trail. A legitimate reason not to board. Something Daniel couldn't dispute. Veronica, where are you now? I'm still in your apartment. I'll clean like usual. Act normal. But I'll keep my phone recording. I'll watch everything. I'll be your eyes. Tears filled Emily's eyes. Not for herself. Not yet. But for this woman who barely knew her. Who was risking everything. Veronica, if he finds out, he won't. I'm nobody, remember, she said quietly. I clean. I'm invisible. In this country, we learn to see everything and say nothing. But some things are worth speaking up for. She paused. Go now, Miss Carter. Pretend you're sick. Get off that plane. Then we fight. The call dropped. Emily stood in the terminal, phone pressed to her ear, listening to silence. Around her, life went on. A child laughed. A woman complained about lost luggage. An announcement called final boarding for flight 482. She lowered her phone, looked at her boarding pass, then toward gate 14, where a man named Ethan Cole was likely scanning the crowd for a woman in a gray sweater with dark blonde hair. She turned and calmly walked to the restrooms. Just as Veronica had told her, she locked herself in a stall, sat on the closed lid, and allowed herself exactly 3 minutes to fall apart. When she came out, her face was pale but composed. She went to the medical station near baggage claim and told the nurse she felt dizzy, like she might faint. The nurse checked her blood pressure, clicked her tongue, and called an ambulance. Protocol. By 3:45 p.m., Emily Carter was in the back of an ambulance being transported to City General Hospital. At 4 p.m., Flight 482 departed for Boston without her. At 4:15, her phone buzzed with a message from Daniel. Did you land? Call me, I'm worried. Emily read it 3 times. She thought about the man who kissed her cheek that morning, who said, call me when you land, with such convincing concern. She thought about Veronica, alone in the apartment, cleaning beside the evidence of a murder plot. She didn't reply. Instead, she called the one person she trusted completely, her uncle, Robert Carter. Robert Carter arrived at City General 45 minutes later, moving through the corridors with the purposeful stride of a man who had spent 30 years in military intelligence. At 60, he was still broad-shouldered and imposing, with short gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. He found Emily in a private exam room, sitting on the edge of the hospital bed, still in her gray sweater and black pants. He said, using the nickname he'd called her since childhood. What happened? Are you sick? Emily looked at her uncle, her father's younger brother, the man who taught her to ride a bike, who walked her down the aisle after her father died, who showed up every Sunday for dinner and never asked unnecessary questions. She had always been able to tell him everything. So she did. Robert listened without interrupting. His face stayed neutral, but something shifted in his eyes, a cold focus, the kind that comes from decades of assessing threats and planning responses. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. Veronica, he said finally. The housekeeper, she recorded this. Fragments. She sent them to me. Emily played the audio. Daniel's voice. Victor's voice. Words like fatal accident, insurance, Chloe. Robert listened once, nodded, and handed the phone back. Where is Veronica now? Still at the apartment. She said she'd stay, act normal, keep recording. Be my eyes, good woman. He stood and paced the small room. She's right about one thing. You cannot go home. And you cannot let Daniel know you suspect anything. Not yet. What do I do? Lily's wedding is tomorrow. I have to be there. If I don't show up, everyone will ask questions. Does Lily know? Not yet. I was going to call her, but Veronica said. She's right, Robert cut in. No calls from unsecured lines. No messages. Nothing Daniel could track. He pulled out his phone. I'll call Lily. I'll tell her you've had a medical issue, nothing serious. But you'll miss the rehearsal dinner. She'd be upset, but she understand. And Daniel will hear it from her, not you. Emily nodded. Her uncle was already thinking 3 steps ahead, just as he'd been trained to do. After that, he continued, we need 3 things. First, a safe place for you to stay, somewhere Daniel doesn't know. Second, a lawyer we can trust. Third, evidence. Veronica can't do everything. We need more. I have access to our joint account, Emily said. If Daniel planned this, there should be traces, payments, withdrawals, something. Good. We'll need a banker who can be discreet. Robert made a note. I know someone. Adrian Silver at Riverbank Financial. He owes me a favor from years back. Emily watched her uncle work, feeling the frozen terror in her chest begin to thaw. She wasn't alone. She had Robert. She had Veronica. She had Lily, once she knew. Uncle, she said quietly. 12 years? How did I not see it? How was I so blind? Robert sat beside her and took her hand. His grip was warm, steady. You weren't blind, Em. You were loyal. There's a difference. Loyalty assumes the best in people. That's not a weakness, unless it's given to the wrong person. He paused. Your father was the same, trusted everyone. It cost him nothing because the people around him deserved it. Daniel doesn't. That's his flaw, not yours. Emily squeezed his hand. What do I do now? For now, you rest. Let me make some calls. Tonight, we move you somewhere safe. At 9 p.m. that evening, Robert drove Emily to a small apartment in an industrial district near the train tracks. It belonged to an old colleague from his intelligence days, a man named Victor Hale, now a private investigator. The apartment was sparse but clean. A bed, a small kitchen, a table with 2 chairs. The window overlooked the railway. Freight cars clanged in the distance. No one will find you here, Robert said. Victor uses it for surveillance work. It's not in any database. Not connected to anyone in your circle. Emily set down her single bag, the only thing she had besides the clothes she was wearing. Everything else, her clothes, her books, her architectural drawings, photos of her mother, was still in the apartment on Lincoln Street, in the home she shared with a man who wanted her dead. Veronica texted, Emily said, looking at her phone. Daniel came home at 6. He was agitated, kept checking his phone, asked if she'd heard from me. She said no. He made a call, she couldn't hear to whom, then went into his office and closed the door. He's nervous, Robert said. Good. Nervous people make mistakes. He pulled out a folder. I've started drafting an official complaint, but we need more evidence before going to the police. Detective Laura Hayes, no relation to Veronica. She's good, honest, but she need proof. The recording is fragmented, useful, but not enough for a conviction. We need documentation, financial records, witnesses. Maybe Mark, Daniel's cousin. He sounded nervous on the recording. He might crack. Emily sat at the small table, suddenly exhausted. The day had lasted a lifetime. That morning, she woke up in her bed, kissed her husband goodbye, and headed to her sister's wedding. Now she was hiding in an apartment by the train tracks. Her husband had planned her murder. Her life had been reduced to 1 bag and a burner phone Robert had given her. Uncle, she said, what if we can't prove it? What if he gets away with it? Robert sat across from her. In the dim light, his face looked older than she remembered, lined with years of worrying. Battles fought, things witnessed. Then we make sure he never gets the chance to try again, he said. He leaned forward. But you need to understand something. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Daniel will realize you're not coming back. He'll start looking. He'll play the concerned husband, might even file a missing persons report. He'll try to control the narrative. We need to be ready. Emily nodded. And Lily, she knows you had a medical issue, stress, exhaustion. She's worried, but focused on the wedding. I'll tell her more tomorrow, after the ceremony. She want to come to you. No, Emily said firmly. Not until after the wedding. It's her day. I won't let Daniel take that from her too. Robert studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. You're stronger than you think. I'm learning. The next day, October 15th, Lily Carter married Aaron Reed in a small ceremony at the city registry office. Emily watched the live stream Robert set up. Her burner phone was propped against a glass of water on the small table. Lily glowed in white, fresh flowers woven into her dark hair, her smile bright enough to light up the entire room. And in the third row, sitting alone, was Daniel Reed. Emily's breath caught when she saw him. He wore the dark suit he had bought for their own wedding 12 years earlier. Hands folded, expression appropriately somber. The concerned husband, attending his sister-in-law's wedding alone because his wife was mysteriously ill. People would notice. People would sympathize. Look at him, Emily whispered, playing the part. Victor Hale, the private investigator, sat beside her. Robert had introduced them that morning. A lean man in his 50s, sharp-eyed, quietly competent, someone who had spent decades observing people. He was already working the case. He's good at it, Victor said. That's what makes him dangerous. People like Daniel don't see themselves as villains. They see themselves as justified. That makes them convincing. On the screen, the ceremony continued. Lily and Aaron exchanged vows. They kissed. They walked back down the aisle as husband and wife. Daniel clapped politely, smiled on cue, and disappeared into the crowd. He's not staying for the reception, Victor noted. Interesting. Emily watched her sister's happy face and felt something inside her harden. Lily deserved this day, this joy, this beginning. She wouldn't let Daniel poison it. Victor, she said, what's our next move? Over the following days, the evidence began to come together. Bank records. Adrian Silver, the bank manager, met Victor in a quiet cafe by the river. He provided statements showing a life insurance policy taken out 6 months earlier. Emily insured, Daniel the sole beneficiary. Emily had never signed it. 3 payments totaling $180,000 to a company registered under Victor Langley. Regular withdrawals matching gambling debts. Over $250,000 in 4 months. A witness, Derek Moore, a neighbor from Lincoln Street, contacted Robert after seeing him visit the apartment. He had noticed unusual activity in recent weeks, men coming and going at odd hours. Daniel meeting people in the courtyard. A blonde woman, Chloe, visiting when Emily was at work. He had even taken photos, instinctively, because something felt off. The crew member, Victor, tracked down Ethan Cole through contacts in aviation. Ethan was nervous, evasive, but when Victor mentioned Victor Langley's name, his face went pale. He didn't confess. He didn't need to. His fear was confession enough. The cousin, Mark Dawson, was the weakest link. Robert approached him one evening outside his apartment, introduced himself as Emily's uncle, and watched Mark fall apart within minutes. He confessed everything, the meetings, the plan, Chloe's involvement, the payments to Langley. He even handed over text messages between himself and Daniel discussing the setup. The mistress, Chloe Bennett, was harder, smart, careful. When Victor started surveillance, she seemed to sense it. She stopped visiting Daniel, stopped calling, but she made one mistake. She trusted her uncle, Frederick Bennett. Frederick Bennett was 55, a respected attorney with an office in Brookhaven. He had known Stephen Carter for years. They had worked together on different cases, trusted each other. When Stephen asked him to represent Emily, he agreed immediately. He had no idea his niece, Chloe Bennett, was involved. The discovery came 5 days into the investigation. Frederick was reviewing financial records when he saw a familiar last name. Bennett, Chloe Bennett, his brother's daughter, the girl he had watched grow up, the one who used to bring him pastries on his birthday, the one who called him Uncle Fred with such warmth. She was listed as a recipient of funds from Daniel's account. She was mentioned in Mark's testimony. She had been photographed entering Daniel's apartment while Emily was at work. Frederick sat in his office for a long time, papers spread out in front of him. His hands were completely still. Then he called Stephen. I need you to tell me everything, he said. No omissions, no protection. I need to know what my niece has done. Stephen told him everything. When he finished, Frederick was silent for a long moment. Then he said, I will continue representing Emily, and I will testify against my own niece if it comes to that. She made her choice. She has to face the consequences. Stephen nodded slowly. That takes courage, Fred. No, Frederick said, his voice heavy. That takes justice. There's a difference. As the evidence mounted, Stephen and Frederick designed a trap. Emily had to resurface, carefully, She would return to the city, stay with Lily and Ethan, and let Daniel know she was alive and asking questions. The goal was to provoke him, make him desperate, push him into a mistake. They installed hidden cameras in Lily's apartment. They equipped Emily with a recording device every time she stepped outside. Law enforcement was on standby. Detective Anna Hayes, now fully briefed and ready to act. Daniel took the bait. He showed up at Lily's apartment 3 days after Emily returned. His face wore the perfect expression of a worried husband. Lily let him in reluctantly, nervous, and Emily met him face to face in the living room. Emily, his voice was soft, concerned. Where have you been? I've been out of my mind. The police, the hospitals, no one knew anything. I thought, he paused, letting his voice crack. I thought I lost you. Emily looked at him. 12 years of marriage. 12 years of breakfasts, arguments, quiet evenings. 12 years of loving a man who had planned her death like a business transaction. I've been around, she said quietly, learning a few things. Daniel's expression flickered, just for a moment, just enough for the cameras to catch it. What do you mean? I mean I know about Victor Langley. I know about Ethan Cole. I know about the insurance policy I never signed. She paused. I know about Chloe. Daniel's face went pale. For a moment, he said nothing. Then slowly, his expression changed. The worried husband disappeared, replaced by something colder. You don't know anything, he said. You're confused. You're exhausted. You need help. I need you to leave. Emily, leave now, Daniel, or I call the police and tell them everything. He stared at her for a long moment. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out. The recording device captured every word. 2 days later, Detective Anna Hayes moved in. Daniel Dawson was arrested in his office mid-sentence with a client. Victor Langley was taken in at a cafe on Riverside Street. His phone was seized. His contacts became evidence. Ethan Cole was picked up from his apartment at dawn, still in his pajamas. Mark Dawson turned himself in voluntarily. His testimony became part of the official case. Chloe Bennett was arrested at her real estate agency in front of colleagues and clients. She looked at her uncle Frederick, standing among the witnesses, and found no rescue in his eyes. Only grief, only justice. The trial began 4 months later at the county courthouse. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank statements, witness testimony, text messages, recorded conversations. Mark's confession alone would have been enough, but there was more, much more. Frederick Bennett took the stand. He testified against his own niece. His voice never trembled. Chloe cried. Daniel stared straight ahead. Victor showed no emotion. The verdicts were delivered after 2 days of deliberation. Daniel Dawson, guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and forgery, sentenced to 14 years in a maximum security facility. Victor Langley, guilty of conspiracy and organizing criminal activity, sentenced to 18 years. Chloe Bennett, guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, sentenced to 8 years. Mark Dawson, guilty of conspiracy, but with significant leniency for cooperation, sentenced to 3 years probation. Ethan Cole, guilty of conspiracy, sentenced to 5 years. In the months that followed, Emily rebuilt her life. She sold the apartment on Lennington Street. Too many memories, too much betrayal. She bought a smaller place near the river and returned to architecture, throwing herself into work with a focus she hadn't felt in years. Veronica became more than a housekeeper. She became a friend. Emily insisted on paying for her youngest daughter's university education. A small gesture, she said, for a debt that can never be repaid. Veronica resisted at first, then she agreed. Then she cried. Lily and Ethan had their first child, a daughter. They named her Emily. The christening took place at St. Michael's Cathedral, where Emily became the godmother, holding the baby in her arms. Stephen continued his Sunday dinners at Emily's new apartment. He never said, "I told you so." He just showed up, like always. Frederick Bennett visited his niece in prison once. They sat together for an hour. They didn't talk about forgiveness. Then he left, a year after the trial. Emily visited Veronica in her small apartment on the outskirts of the city. They sat at the kitchen table, drinking tea from glass cups, watching snow fall outside. "I never thanked you properly," Emily said, "for risking everything." Veronica shrugged. "In our country, we learn to see everything and say nothing. It helps us survive." She paused. "But some things are worth speaking up for. You were worth speaking up for." Emily reached across the table and took her hand. That rough hand that had cleaned her home, held a phone recording a murder plot, and reached across every boundary to save a life. "Thank you," Emily said, "for seeing me, for speaking up, for everything." Veronica smiled. "You're welcome, Miss Carter. You're welcome." Outside, the snow kept falling over the city, over the river, over a place where two women from different worlds found each other in the dark and led each other into the light. A husband's betrayal can shatter you, but a stranger's courage can put you back together. The strongest poison comes from those who once promised to love you. The strongest cure comes from those who had no reason to care, but did anyway. In the end, justice isn't about punishment. It's about becoming the kind of woman who no longer needs saving, because she has learned to save herself. Thank you for listening. If this story moved you, please like, share it with your loved ones, and subscribe to the channel.